Somewhere in the world right now, someone is being buried. The grave will be dug to a specific depth. The body will be positioned in a specific way. There will be flowers, perhaps words spoken, perhaps silence. The people standing around that grave will feel something they cannot fully put into words. And almost none of them will stop to ask why we do this at all. Why we don't simply leave the dead where they fall. Why we gather. Why we mark the spot. Why, across every culture that has ever existed on this planet, humans have treated their dead as something that requires a response. The answer to that question reaches back further than almost anything else we know about ourselves. And what it reveals about the human mind is more surprising than most people expect. Let's start with what the archaeological record actually shows, because the evidence here is both older and stranger than the popular version of history suggests. The oldest confirmed evidence of deliberate human burial comes from a site called Kafze Cave in northern Israel. In 1969, archaeologists excavating the cave discovered the remains of at least 15 individuals, including a young woman buried with a child placed at her feet, the child's arms extended as if in an embrace. The burial has been dated to approximately 100,000 years ago, predating Homo sapiens' migration out of Africa. But here is what makes Kafse genuinely significant. The bodies were not simply placed in the ground. They were positioned deliberately, with apparent care for orientation and arrangement. And several of the graves contained grave goods, animal bones, ochre pigment, objects that had no survival function and could only have been placed there intentionally. This matters because intentional burial is not an obvious behavior. From a purely biological standpoint, a dead body is simply matter that is no longer metabolizing. Other animals do not bury their dead. Some primates display mourning behaviors, carrying deceased infants, returning to the bodies of group members, but no other species on Earth consistently, deliberately, and across all known populations creates marked resting places for the dead. The question is not what ancient humans did with their dead. The question is why they started doing it in the first place, and why they never stopped. Archaeologist Paul Pettit at Durham University, one of the leading researchers on Paleolithic mortuary behavior, has argued that the emergence of deliberate burial represents one of the clearest early indicators of what he calls a mortuary impulse, a specifically human tendency to treat the dead as still having a relationship with the living, not just as bodies, as people who continue to matter after biological death. This is not a small cognitive leap. It requires the ability to hold an abstraction in mind, the idea that someone who no longer exists as a living agent still has a status that demands response, and to act on that abstraction through coordinated communal behavior. The Neanderthals complicate the story in ways researchers are still debating.